Alright, so just wanted to put up this quick little video here because I've been in Overthrows again in the Pale Heart doing some dual destiny fighting Subjugators, and you know how Microcosm does more damage to Subjugators, or at least that's the community findings out there, right? Because the intrinsic trait here of Microcosm, it says it fires a beam of kinetic light, dealing massive bonus damage to shields, right? So I guess for whatever reason, Subjugators are coded as shields, so therefore they're taking more damage from Microcosm. Now, I saw while surfing YouTube this morning, I saw a video by Duddits, right? So I'll make sure to pin the video in the comment section or in the description. You can feel free to check that out. I didn't see the entire video, but I saw enough to get my mind spinning. Figured I'd give a shout out there. And he was going over the new origin trait from the Garden of Salvation weapons, Photoinhibition, showing how this origin trait is also dealing bonus damage. Because if we read it here, it says, this weapon deals bonus damage to combatant shields, right? And targets with overshields. Okay, very cool. Also, for ad clear purposes, in case you're curious, when you do break shields with Photoinhibition weapons, the Garden of Salvation weapons, you will basically disorient enemies around you, right? So it's like having like a blinding GL mixed in with your shield breaks on these Garden of Salvation weapons. Very cool. But the main thing he was showing was this is doing extra damage to Subjugators as well, just like Microcosm, right? Which makes sense because apparently Subjugators are coded as shields. So this got my mind spinning back to a shiny Hammerhead that I acquired from Onslaught in Into the Light that I held on to for a very niche purpose, right? I knew that this would not be a generically good role by, like, you know, for neutral gameplay or anything like that, but it could have a very niche purpose, and I have a whole lot of weapons where they're meant for very situational instances, right? Not necessarily applicable wide range, but look, I make content on the game, so I like to save these unique roles in case I can make some creative thing about it, right? Now, I've never even used this Hammerhead, okay, but I held on to it during Into the Light, not because it was a shiny, that's a bonus, but it has under, over, and target lock, right? So now under, over, right, it says deals improved bonus damage to targets with overshields and deals a small amount of bonus damage to combatant shields. So again, this is a double damage perk, right? Target lock can bring your damage up to 40%, right? A little hard to do on a Subjugator, albeit, but if you have a big target or divinity bubble, then you know you can really max out your effect with target lock. But the main thing here is I wanted to see how much extra damage under, over could potentially do to Subjugators as well. Does it work? And I believe it does. I'm going to go into the clips next so that you can see. And we'll look at some of the damage numbers. And you know, again, I'm not a scientific tester by any means, but in my findings, under, over is definitely doing a lot more damage, almost double damage it seemed like, because I was getting, just because I actually had the opportunity with the shiny to switch off and on under, over to test it on the same enemies, right? So what I would do versus the Subjugator in the boss room is I would check the numbers on one for like a crit shot on a Subjugator without ramping up target lock, just, you know, base values, and then check with the other perk, and there was a huge difference, right? So we'll go into the clips next because, you know, this is, you know, I knew I was holding on to this for a good reason. Not that it's like meta or anything like that, but just kind of cool to find out that you held on to this unique thing that could do something very special, better than anything else in its category, right? Like there's no other machine guns that can, legendary machine guns that can benefit from like a 55% damage perk from under, over, or whatever it is, and a 40% damage from target lock. Like if you multiplicatively, you're doing over double damage. I mean, so that's pretty cool, right? And I hold on to a lot of niche weapons for purposes like this, and I made content on them. So just like notably, I made a video last season with this line in the sand having deconstruct and bait and switch, so a 40% damage buff versus vehicles and constructs or enemies that are coded as such, right? Thinking of like Rainix, right? I haven't put out any videos yet testing deconstruct on Rainix, but if you want to, I would suggest it's probably something worth your time if you're into that stuff. Right, so you're getting like 70 plus extra damage between these two perks multiplicatively on like walkers, say in the Devil's Lair GM when you're fighting at long range. You need precision-based damage versus a vehicle or a construct. You can just melt those enemies with that weapon. Same thing with Speleologist here, deconstruct and target lock. Just thinking like if you want to just absolutely destroy a tank in one magazine, you could use something like this machine gun here. I've used this Edge Transit with deconstruct. I also have a Cascade deconstruct on the Briggs in Exodus Crash, and I suppose I've also used it in the first encounter in Vesper's Host. Right, you don't need to proc bait and switch. You don't need to be. It's just a very simple damage perk that you can get outright, right, versus certain enemy types. And then this like chill inhibitor, which I recently focused in my last video on doing damage to the puppeteer with Rhyme Stealer and bait and switch. You know, this isn't like super unique by any means, but it is unique in the sense that I can use it on a stasis themed subclass like what I was doing with Silence and Squall and Dusk Fields and Withering Blades and Hailfire Spikes, right? Everything is doing stasis damage. You're freezing the enemy, therefore you're shattering the enemy with the grenade launcher at times, giving yourself stacks of frost armor with every shatter, right? So there's always a good reason to hold on to these unique combos, even if they're not in, even if some other content creator is saying this is what the god roll is, if Light GG is saying this is what the god roll is, it's usually just a very generic, well-rounded roll when you're looking at other people's quote-unquote god rolls. But really, there's all types of unique roles that are godly at doing things much better than the standard, right? So that's why I wanted to hold on to this, test it. Let's go into some of the footage next, and I'll do some commentary over that. Alright, so getting into the first clips here where I decided to actually test this out instead of just guessing. So right here I'm using under over, and you can see the base value hits are for 48-21. Of course, there were some higher damage numbers in there, partially from target lock, but generally the enemy is weakened, the subjugator is weakened the entire time, or for the majority of the time, which is, you know, the most consistent base value there being 48-21 with under over. So now I'm going to take it off under over and switch over to destabilizing rounds and see how this performs, right? And so now the average base value damage numbers are going to be, well, we're getting a lot of 25.96, a lot of 36.40. I'm going to get a second clip here. I'm not sure if there was an additional damage buff maybe there from range, but here I'm a little further back and I'm going to get consistent numbers of 31.65, right? And he's clearly weakened. So if you do the math on this, you're talking at least a 40 to 50 plus% damage increase from under over. Look, I just switched back to under over, and you can see the damage numbers average much higher, right? Interestingly enough, there were some green numbers in there for 1534, and I don't know what those green numbers mean exactly. They were periodic, almost on the same frequency as like volatile explosions. The volatile explosions were, like basically another 3,000 worth of damage on every proc. I know that that's the red numbers, but I'm not sure what the green numbers are. So if anybody knows, feel free to let me know in the comment section. Alright, so here I'm going into the Pale Heart. Hammerhead is on under over with Desperate Measures because I just don't want any target lock procs to mess up my I just want more consistent damage numbers, so I just make sure that I don't have Desperate Measures procced when I test this. So I think here, yeah, I'm going to wait out the Desperate Measures timer. There's 2 seconds left. I hit him with the precision hit and see what the damage numbers are. Okay, 65, 32, 65, 32, pretty consistent. So let me dodge out of here and see if I can get to a safe spot and switch back over to destabilizing rounds, because that's not going to apply any kind of damage buff, right? That's an add clear perk. You kill an enemy, you apply volatile to the surrounding enemies. It's not going to, it should be a neutral perk to use to test here. Now, I wasn't paying as much attention to my Desperate Measures timer here, so the first shot I'm going to hit with Desperate Measures. 55.74, and then it goes all the way down to 42.88. Okay, so no weaken, no other damage buffs here. We know what the numbers are, so this is a much better test than the first clips where I was just winging it in Dual Destiny, kind of letting my teammate down with some bad gameplay at the same time. So look, we got 42.88 for our crit with no under over, 65.32 with under over. That's a 52.3% increase in damage, right? If you do your basic math formula I haven't done in a long time, which would be final minus initial over initial, right, times 100 to tell you your increase. And if we compare that to what I discerned as the average base values in Dual Destiny versus the Subjugator boss tier enemies there, our base values were 31.65 without under over and 48.21 with under over, and the math works out to the exact same, a 52.3% increase, right? So here I'm just going back to get my revenge with Zealot's Reward, the crafted version that I made last week with Photoinhibition. That's not telling you anything at all there. Like I said, if you want to know more about the Photoinhibition perk and how that works on Subjugators, go watch Duditz's video. I think I'm going to go finish watching the video and see if I can get some better information now that I'm kind of done testing under over. But yeah, just looking around the Pale Heart, I can see there's another Blight under the big tree in the middle there, which means there's another Subjugator, so I may as well go see if I can do a little boss melt with Hammerhead, see how it performs just using under over with Gerfalcons. Now you'll see that I'm actually using the weapon with Gerfalcons, is because that was basically how I had it being useful, or how I had it in mind that it could be a useful weapon, right? Because the downfall to Hammerhead, unlike Commemoration and Retrofit Escapade, is the ammo capacity per mag is not nearly as good because you don't have any reload perks. But if you're on Gerfalcon's Hauberk with Marksman's Dodge to keep your Vanishing Step and your volatile rounds flowing, then you're going to be, you don't have to worry about reload anyways, especially with a high mobility. So yeah, this, if I end up using this machine gun in any type of scenario versus Subjugators or whatever, or barrier champions, it would be on this build specifically, right? So the Subjugator's a real pain in the butt. Yeah, definitely. I mean, just imagine this with a Divinity bubble, right? Because, I mean, trying to get target lock procced on these Subjugators is a pain in the butt. But I will say target lock is kind of interesting there, because I was analyzing some of the damage numbers. It seems like the first proc of target lock is always a 20% damage buff, right? So look, I got it up to ×2 and then it went away there. But look, I've got 3 shots left in the mag, so yeah, you can take down a Subjugator with 1 mag with Hammerhead. At least that's good to know, even with bad aim. Anyways, that's it for the video. Enjoy yourself some under over versus some Subjugators. Let me know what you think in the comments. See you next time.